Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, coffee in hand. Your lovely little
Yep.
office you have there. Me in my
hmm
living room, and I won't pan my camera around so that you can't see the laundry that's over there on the chair that I need to hold.
That's good. We learn how to make our space.
Yes,
Like
we
it
do.
is.
All that matters is
Yep.
what's in this frame right now.
Yep. Mhm.
Yep. Well, thanks, Teresa. I appreciate you so much agreeing to just chat with me this morning. And I know I gave you sort of this like really broad, sort of like lofty little thing to talk about. And I think it's really funny how you said, well, I don't have anything that I wrote down or notes or whatever. And I'm a little bit like that too. You know, like you said, I'm a teacher, I'm a teacher. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I could have the best laid plans and they're out the window in 5 minutes, So,
Mhm.
because sometimes you just have to address something and just go a certain way. So I appreciate your flexibility in, being willing to just sort of wing it because you kind of have to
Yeah.
do that, I think, on here.
Mhm.
And I'll just sort of explain to you sort of the premise of this podcast. And the whole reason I even started it was I was actually on my way to ride my horses. I had them in my horse trailer and I haul out to the Riverside State Park. They have that nice little arena and round pen out there.
Mhm.
And I was on my way out there and I just thought, there's been so many people that have been so inspiring to me in my life and just people that it didn't take me long at all to just get a huge list of women in particular that I've just always admired so much and thought that they're just cool people, and that they didn't get that way. They weren't just born that way. Like we've lived some life and we've had life teach us some things and we've had people teach us some things. And I sort of want I thought I want to start to document that. And so you're one of the people, of course, on my list who I love and adore. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, like I say, we just really appreciate you being willing to do this and just kind of tell us your story and however that means to you and whatever that means to you in whatever way you'd kind of like to do it.
Well, I appreciate you too. And, I think that, as we age, it's just invaluable to recognize the people around us that do inspire us because I think when we're younger, we're so fixated on where we're going and, the day to day. We don't take time to really step into, gosh, who are those people that are doing cool things? And if I just emulated what they were doing, I could sure as heck save myself a whole lot of stress. But nope, we have to spend our whole life trying to figure it out on our own. And I think at the age you and I are, we're recognizing that. And we appreciate that in other people too, their values and who they've become. So I appreciate you. And I appreciate the fact that you're documenting that because I really think it's an invaluable tool for people to hear that. And I'm hoping maybe the younger population does listen to this because truthfully, it could save them a whole lot of heartache and discontent
Yes,
we have been through if they made the decision to, start following in the footsteps of people that are already successful doing what they want to do.
absolutely. Yeah,
hmm
but yeah, I'm not sure I would have listened. I'm not necessarily even still the best listener. Just, ask the men in my life. But I'm getting there. But no, I mean, yeah, I totally agree. I think about that too. I think, oh my gosh, if I could have kind of seen this at, my 25-year-old self or even my 18-year-old self, you never know. It might have made a difference.
It would have. Well, and that just kind of brings me into my story. So a lot of my, when you ask me to create my story, so I speak at a lot of events. Last year was my first really big event. I spoke in Dallas in front of 1,200 people in my health business. And, it was kind of the same thing. I really tried to write down what I wanted to say and who I wanted to connect with. And at the end of the day, it was just all heart led. And so, I just am hoping this morning that whatever my heart decides to share, that it is impactful to you and to those that we're sharing with. And so, I don't even know, what part of my story to kind of start with, but I feel like, with with you and where you and I have connected is through the horse world. And so maybe stepping into that would be really helpful. So many of you may not know, but as a 7-year-old, I was like a lot of little girls that loved horses. And I always wanted a really nice horse and everything. But, you know, we were a family of, well, at that time, there was 5 of us, and we actually ended up with 7 at one point, his, hers, and theirs. But at that point, there was 5 of us, and I ended up with a hand-me-down pony named Booger, of all things. And Booger was a booger. And I just remember my most vivid memory of him was when I was riding him across the street from our dairy farm. I was raised on a dairy farm. And I was riding him over to our neighbor's house, and he was just absolutely naughty. I got dumped, and I just remember having scrapes and blood and crying and everything. And that was that pony. And he ended up passing away. But, you know, I think for me, that started my life as being with horses and grit, because it did not deter me one iota from not loving horses. So I started from there, and we had a lot of hand-me-down horses, shared horses, because, you know, we lived on a dairy farm and we had lots of life happening all the time. And I had to figure out a way to serve my passion, which was to ride whatever was available. And so that's what I did. And the best, nicest pony I ever had was named Camelot King Arthur. And he was an incredible little pony. I can't remember the mixture that he was, but just a cool little pony. And, you know, I did 4-H with him, and that started out my 4-H, you know, time. And I did 4-H from the time I was, as soon as you could get in at 8, and through graduation of high school, and then that year after that you could. So went to state fair, I showed Western, did all the things. What I learned through that process, so I never really had lessons at that point in my life. I had to just ride what I had. I had to work through, I mean, I would be that kid that would wear a swimsuit, towel, no shoes, riding my horse from dawn till dusk. My parents never knew where I was, ever. I would be galloping down, you know, with my hair blowing in the wind, you know, so to speak. And I miss those days, right? When you could just be carefree.
Yeah.
We swam in the irrigation canals. I mean, can you imagine now with your kids?
Yeah.
No, that's just a
Yeah.
big, we did by ourselves. Hello.
Yep.
And my best friend, she lived within a distance of my place, and she rode a little pony too. And we would meet in the middle and swim in the canals with our ponies and ride. And she did 4-H with me as well. And we're still best friends to this day. She was just here this last weekend. So just that connection of life, of horses, you know, kept us together. So the point of that was, you know, that freedom that I felt of just being able to be with the horses, have those. And, you know, life at home was hard. My parents were divorced when I was 7, and my dad remarried. And, you know, many of you have probably been through divorce. And I'm just telling you that I'm not complaining about my life then. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying horses helped me to navigate a lot of that life, because I had a heart-to-heart connection at all times with a horse, and through that time. And I'm just so incredibly grateful. It kept me grounded. It kept me having 4-H, because we could only choose one thing a year. I played basketball, believe it or not, at 5 foot tall for I was a starting point guard and all of that good stuff for years. But I also got to do 4-H. And so that really was something that it just kept me grounded. And then through college, I bought my first like horse that I got to choose for me, because all the other ones were hand-me-downs. And I took him to college with me, kept him out of my aunt and uncle's. Loved that time. Got to experience, you know, the Durheims, right? Randy and Aunt Ellen, Uncle Larry Durheim. They let me keep the horse out there, because I went to Spokane. I went to a paralegal school up here, and Phillips Junior College is not even in there anymore, because I actually wanted to go to law school. And at the end of the day, again, with a mixed family, finances were tight. And so it wasn't really in the cards for me to be able to go to law school, which I had really had in my mind the whole time to be able to do that. And so I settled. So that's going to be part of my story too, settling.
Yep.
So you settle for what you can have at that time. I didn't realize the value of really setting your mind to something. And I know God blesses you where you are and what you
Right.
have. I just settled for that. I went to paralegal school, and most people take 2 years. I did mine in 18 months because I was paying for it for myself, had a full-time job at that time. And, still riding that whole time, still had my horse out at Island Larry's and more cows and all of that. So it was just that constant connection all the time, even through that, because that was a tough time in my life too. Not having finances, my first time out, it was like that, that baby that comes out and you're a little wobbly and you don't know, how to figure out life. But I was living on my own. I mean,
Yeah.
when I graduated high school, I was out of my house within
Same.
weeks. And,
Yep. 2 weeks.
yeah,
Boom.
moving to
Yep.
my own apartment and living like, because, the whole thought of staying on the dairy farm, it's not that it wasn't a great life. It was hard. And it's not in my heart what I wanted for me. And I knew that. And I knew
Yeah.
God was prompting me, and he was having me step out in faith. And this is, and so I did. And that's where it started. So, so I went to paralegal school, 18 months, finished that. And I moved back. That was in Spokane. I'd moved to Spokane. And then after I was finished, I moved back to Moses Lake. And I got my first big time job in a law firm. It was horrible. What I learned is that attorneys are, okay, no offense to anybody that's listening, but you could probably resonate with this. I was a young girl, just fresh out of college, and then plopped myself in a law firm with strong personalities. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And I remember having this lady at work there that would go through all of my papers, and she had a big bun and these little tiny glasses that worked in the law firm. And she would red mark everything. And I just felt like less than. So again, I felt like I was settling again, and I was less than again, and it was just, I feel like that experience resonates in my head a lot. But it was also a learning moment for me to realize I got to choose. I got to choose to stay there, and there was a moment where I felt trapped, like I had to stay there because that was the only job available. But then I started spreading my wings, and I started applying for other jobs, and I landed a really great job in a law firm in Ephrata, which meant I had to travel back and forth every day. But, it was a much better place, and I was there for 10 years, long and short. In the meantime of that, I met the love of my life, Jim. And this might make me cry.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry.
um,
Because
because
I love your husband too, right? Like
I
he's like
know
my
you
brother.
do. Who doesn't love Jim?
I
Anybody
know,
that
right?
And, what I didn't mention through that time is I had a high school sweetheart, and it was a constant roller coaster, and he was narcissistic, which now I know the name of that.
Yep.
But didn't really want me, didn't want anybody else to have me. So it was a constant for 4 years.
Yeah.
And when I met Jim, he was actually dating my boss. And oh my gosh, our story is hilarious. I thought he was a complete jerk the first time I met him. He was smoking a cigarette, drinking a beer, had long hair, his pants tucked into his cowboy boots, it was just cow shit all over him. I was like, oh, you're a catch,
Gross.
Yeah, well, because I was like a little bit like this at that point,
Yeah.
snobby.
Yeah.
A little
Yeah.
better than now. And he knew that right away. He caught that vibe with me. And
Oh
so
yeah.
he called me out on that. And so we actually, from that moment, there was a part of him that was just like, because he didn't kowtow to me like lots of guys at that point, because I was a little sassy and cute.
Yeah.
He was just like, And so we became just friends somehow through that process, talking on the phone. And then March 1st of 2000 was our first date, and our son was born 7 years to the date of that first date.
Aw.
And he proposed to me that fall amidst some up and downs. And unbeknownst to me, I had no idea he was even thinking about marriage because that was the last, I was the last one anybody thought was going to get married. And he proposed September 27th of 93. And I said yes. And we got married March 1st of 94. And we are celebrating 30 years in June 4th of this year. So that's kind of the long and short there. And so that's the part of my story stepping into that. And so Jim has been my biggest supporter. And I think God put him here because he knew I needed that. I needed, coming again, just no offense to my life growing up, broken home, but the support level was not there. And then at the point, my parents had more children and my stepbrothers and sisters. And so their life was really consumed. And then they had the dairy farm, so there was a lot of busy and, and there wasn't a lot of connection within our family. There's a lot of disconnect and dysfunction. And so there wasn't a lot of that. And so Jim came in a way of, he just loves me unconditionally and has always been my biggest support. And so so I am a dreamer and creative. And so whatever, was my whim of the week, he was like, woo, yeah, let's do it. And so we bought our first home right as we were getting married. And I was still traveling back and forth as a paralegal to Ephrata. And I had my horse, and we had a place over there called the Saddle Club, the Ephrata Saddle Club in those days. And so there was a big group of ladies, and it was the social place of the season at our saddle club. So that brought me into my adulthood of riding, was the Saddle Club. And at that point, I loved that venture. And so I started actually, when we got married, they asked me what I wanted for a wedding present, and I asked for a horse. And do you know Sue Nacarado? Do you know the Nacarados?
Oh,
Megan?
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
So Sue,
quite well.
okay. So Sue gave me a horse for a wedding present.
Oh.
And Jim went and picked it up in we bought this crappy 2-horse trailer, and they had to lift him in there, and he was a yearling, and he was this big, wormy, pot-bellied quarter horse.
Up from the hills of Inchelium.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And he was the first horse I started under saddle.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So that for a little background, you may not know this, maybe a little trivia for you, is that Jim and I actually worked for Sue up at that ranch, up at the Chief Barnaby Ranch.
Oh, yeah.
In it must have been 92 for like 5 minutes. I was up there starting colts for them, and Jim was up there doing, helping them with their cows or, doing something like that. It's like, well, I think that might have been where I went 2 weeks after I graduated from high school, is up to that ranch to ride the horses for them. Yeah, right? I mean, just like, this is perfect. And to be honest with you, that like, I think about that job and what I did when I was there and the kind of person that I was when I was there. And I just remember, the thing I remember the most about that is waking up in the morning and saddling up my good horse with a cup of coffee, going out there, saddling up my good horse and just going up in the mountains and just checking on fences and checking on the cow calf pairs and just making sure everything was cool. And it was like the most peaceful time probably of my whole life. Mm-hmm. That feeling. And I feel like I've been chasing that feeling since then.
Yeah. And I think Jim feels a lot the same because he was on a feedlot when we first got married. And, it's just, let's just put that in here right now, because I think we are always wishing for more. And if we could there are no green grass on the other side. Right. If we would water and fertilize what we've been given a lot of times and I'm not saying you shouldn't have goals and dreams. I'm just saying a lot of times we wish for what we can't have. And when it's right there. Yeah. Everything. And I
feel like that's a wishing for less moment for me, like, oh yeah, I work really hard. I got all this and that, and a nice car and the whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's a thing where I wish for less. Mm-hmm. Like I just want to chase that now at my age, right? Or at our age now, we've
Mhm.
gone through, want this, want that, got to feel like you got to be this, got to be that. Now I just want peace, and I just want my horses and my cup of coffee and occasionally a glass of wine.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of that is just happiness within,
Yeah.
and that's the venture, that's kind of the end of my story because, as I was saying, I started training horses at that point. He
Yep.
was my first horse in
Yep.
training. And um, when it took us actually 7 years to get our son. And so when I was working at the law firm and I had this horse and life was great at that moment. And then I was going to add a child in here. I realized, when you think about less is more, that's what I wanted. I wanted to just really be a mom at that moment. And I didn't really want to be a mom before then. I didn't really have that desire in my heart to be a mom. Jim really wanted kids. And I was always afraid that I wouldn't have the tools to be a good mom because just life, I just didn't know if I could be a good mom. But when I got pregnant with Jade, I was like, I don't want someone else to raise my kid. I want to have every moment with this kid. So I took that first horse and I let the law firm know, and I stayed home with Jade. And at the same time, Jim quit his job because he didn't want to miss a minute with Jade. So we
Oh,
went from this 2 income home to, like you're saying, wish for less. And we were living on $1,000 a month,
oh,
and our
wow.
payment was 500 at that time. But I remember that like but there was nothing I wanted, right? There was nothing I wanted except to be with our son and to be together and have our little family. And those are, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
because when you think about all the things that you could have had, like I see people giving up so much to have, like you're saying. And I'm so grateful that I was able to see at that moment because I knew for me, my parents were so busy growing up on the dairy. They never had time. My dad, they did their best with the tools they had, but they never had time. If you could shift time for money, you know, if you could shift that, I mean, if you could just have more time and have more, still have more money, that would be the thing. And that's what I have learned through this process too, is, what is the value you're putting on time, your time with the things that are most important to you. And so when I decided to stay home, I realized I had to create an income at some point there. And so I started with my one horse and a bunch of rocks on our little piece of property that we bought there, teaching riding lessons. And I that was so much fun. And Jade was in a front pack or a backpack at all times. I was teaching, training other little kids, that kind of thing. And the only background I had, because I really, at the Saddle Club, I had started taking some lessons at that point. And that was kind of part of it, is that and they were expensive, too. And I had started doing jumping and some eventing by that point. And I was taking lessons by the time I had Jade. And so I realized if I wanted to kind of have some of those opportunities, I was gonna have to do something. And so when I started teaching lessons, that was kind of to fund too some of my goals and dreams in my head. And so I started doing that. And within a short amount of time, so by time we left Moses Lake, so we moved from Moses Lake, we were there 20 years between the time we had Jade and the time that we moved to Spokane 10 years ago. I moved our program to, we had 14 lesson horses and about 60 students a week. I had 8 horses in training.
Oh, wow.
And so I took my dream from that 7-year-old little girl that loved things to being a paralegal, which didn't fill my soul.
Yeah.
I did it. I could cross it off my list. And I think God kind of protected me from being a lawyer because I'm not sure that was for me. And because I would have had to deal with them on a daily basis, and I'm not sure about that. It's a lot more fun dealing with horses. And
Yeah.
so, I've always had that passion for horses, but what that gave us is it gave me autonomy I got to put the value on myself by creating the dreams behind my eyes. of teaching students people to ride. And in the meantime, raising both of my kids in an environment where they got to be around horses, hard work. Mom was always home. The one caveat to all of that, though, was funding. All of that, you know, the ranch didn't always pay for itself. So Jim was on the road a lot and worked away from home. And that was a sacrifice that we made, you know, woulda, coulda, shoulda, but you do what you have to do in the
Yeah.
in the meantime. And I have a lot of, I want to speak this in here, just if you don't mind.
Of course.
I want to say to ladies, you're gonna bitch if your husband's home all the time, and you're gonna bitch when your husband's on the road making an earning for you. So you got to find a place to just be happy in your marriage. And I find when I coach, because, you know, now I health coach and I coach people in life a lot. And that's one of the biggest things I can say with regard to our marriage that's always made it work is, you know, whether he was home or at work, I loved him and appreciated him. Now, was it perfect? No. But at the end of the day, when you're making a sacrifice as a family, it's a sacrifice as a family. You're in it together. You know, when you get married, you're evenly yoked. You're both in this. And sometimes it's one person leading and the other one's kind of getting dragged along. And then sometimes the other person's leading and the other person's getting dragged along, and you can be right in unison together. But there's a lot of times that the sacrifice that you choose to make is for both sides. And if we just choose to be married, you know, that's the other thing. When we got married, we never say the word divorce, ever. It does not even come into a conversation. You know, we just didn't decide that. We just committed. So I know that's a little off the subject there, but it's truly something that speaks to my heart, because I am so passionate about marriage. And, you know, if you can work through the hard, when you get to the other side, and it's never that it's not hard, it's just a less hard.
Sure.
You know,
Absolutely.
I can't,
Some hards are harder than others.
yeah,
For
I
sure.
heard John Maxwell says, you know, if you can get to the point where you really realize that every day is uphill,
Yeah.
every single day.
Yeah.
I love that. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, okay. And
Yeah.
that you're just constantly at an even pace. You know,
Yep.
there's no sprinting, right? There's no running, and there's absolutely no turning back. It's
Yeah.
just a steady incline, and you can do it. That you will make it through, but it all starts with a decision. And if you're standing in your marriage with one foot in and one foot out, always looking for a way out, or you're looking for a way that's easier, that's on you. And you've got to own you, and you have to own if you're all in. And I came at year 12 in our marriage, I had to decide that again, I'm all in. And
Yep.
I never had to decide again. That was
Yep.
it, you know. Now, if there was infidelity or abuse or something like that, that would have been a whole nother thing, but there's never been that. And
Yeah.
he still is, like I said in the beginning, my biggest supporter. And he's the reason I have to tell him that I have all these darn horses still, and that I'm still involved in all these things, because
Yeah.
he lives that life, you know.
Yeah. Well,
So
you can blame him or you and appreciate him at the same time.
exactly. He's always supporting my terrible habits. I mean,
Dang
come
it, Jim.
on, right
Dang
there.
it.
Yes. So, and you know what I experienced through growing our horsemanship program there in Moses Lake is, well, back up again, is when I had Jade and I started the ranch. That was a moment. This story is powerful too. I think it's a great part of my story. Is Jade was about 3 months old, and I decided, you know, I probably shouldn't just hang my shingle on the door that I'm a trainer or a riding instructor. I should probably do something, right? And so I looked up all these things that you could do, and the one that I found that just made the most sense was the Certified Horsemanship Association. They're the largest certifying body in the whole United States, and some other places in Mexico now too. And so Jim packed up half our house in our truck, and we went to my first CHA certification clinic. Jade was nursing. He was 3 months old. And I went for this. And as an emotional mama, brand new baby, husband, I'm not sure that that was the best thing to do ever, but you know, I truly was emotional because going through that process was my first, other than being with lawyers, you know, the criticism constantly, constructive criticism with people that really care about you and want you to grow. That was like my first experience. And so the process of CHA is you come in, and to be certified at the different levels, you have to demonstrate, one, your writing ability has to be above whatever you're certified at. You have to demonstrate whether you are a professional in the industry. You have to demonstrate if you can safely conduct lessons. You have to demonstrate that you have the passion and structure to be able to teach lessons in a progressive manner. And so to go through that process, you have to be you are in front of two people at all times being evaluated. Um, and I'll tell you, and you teach lessons to 8 other people. So a group of 8 people, you have 15 minutes. So you get a subject, and it's like, you're going to teach posting trot. And in 15 minutes time, you have to take your riders from the ground, a safety check, get them in the saddle, and teach them a lesson. And that was like, whoa, holy cow. And then at the end, not only do those 2 people, your 2 evaluators evaluate you, your peers evaluate you. And man, whoo, that was a lot on this emotional mama at the time. And on day 2, I was going to go home. I was crying my eyes out. I was ready to throw my hands in the air. And again, thank God for Jim, because he's like, honey, we're here. You've paid for it. Let's just finish. And, you know, by the end of the week, I was certified level 2, which is a big hit on my ego. Because when I walked in there, I was like, I own the place. You know, I know stuff.
Right.
And,
Booker taught you a lot.
at 27 years old, I knew all the things.
Oh,
You know?
yes. Well, I knew them all at 19. So what took you so long?
I don't know. And this is, again, a point I want to make. If you are not willing to hear other people speak into you, then you are shorting yourself. And when you can be open, and the younger you learn this, I'm so proud of my daughter and my son.
Oh, yeah.
They are both amazing humans. And I think it's just modeling this behavior, because they both went through CHA too.
Oh, okay.
At young ages. Yeah.
Yeah.
And through the process, because we certify riding instructors at our ranch, you know, and they went through the clinics together and they've learned, and I'm super proud of them. But I can just say, through that process, what I learned is the power of being open to more. You can't become who you're going to become because you can only see what you can see. It takes someone else seeing you from the outside to see what is possible for you, because you can't see it for yourself. And and that was the first experience for me of learning that. And I'm so incredibly grateful at that moment. And I wasn't grateful for a long, long time, but I did come back home and I put my nose to the grindstone, and I worked on being better and better and better as an instructor. And so learning to create lesson plans, and I actually wrote a book on lesson plans, levels 1 through 4. And that's what created our horsemanship program that we have here. And so that we can certify other riding instructors, but we have an internship program where we take people from young kids that maybe they don't know work ethic, they don't know about horses, and they can go through this program and learn work ethic, how to be an amazing human, but also how to teach. And if you can teach one thing, you can teach anything, right?
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
You know,
Yep. Yep.
When you learn the, demonstration, application, review, when you learn just those basic steps, you can teach anything. And so I went back again, and so that was 2004. And I actually received my master instructor in Western English and jumping, and they recommended me to become a certified instructor, which certifies other riding instructors all over the United States. And so, and you have to do an internship program through that. And so I did, and I waited a long time to actually run my own clinics, just because that self-worth piece in my body that had held me back from childhood was really speaking into here. And so I think it wasn't until, if I remember, I think I should have got my dates in, I think 2010 or 2012, where I actually went and I started running my own clinics and stuff. So that's another thing I would just say is that voice in your head is, you know, the sooner you can deal with that voice in your head, the better. That piece of unworthiness that I held from being young. So so that was a great process for me. And I think the horsemanship industry is the grassroots of horses. And I have always felt a connection there. And I tried when the kids were younger to stay as riding as a professional. I was eventing and riding dressage. And I actually trained with an Olympic trainer at that point and had a nanny and all the things and was traveling. And I realized Jazzy was about 2 at that point to step back from riding as a professional at that time. And I still rode professionally, but I didn't compete at those high levels because it just, the amount of work it took and being a mom, I just loved being a mom more. And a lot of people can balance that. I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong there, right, Becky? I'm not,
Sure.
but I'm
Course.
just
Yeah.
saying for me,
For you.
I
Yeah.
realized at that point because there was just too many things, you know.
Yep.
And I think again, I was still not as open as I am now. If I would have been open to hearing someone else share with me or taken information in at that point about personal growth, I probably could have navigated a lot more things.
Sure.
But I was in the chaos of my brain and
Mhm.
trying to do it all perfectly.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes that control piece comes in there, right? Where you feel like you have to have everything just right, just so.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
you it's just kind of a lie you tell yourself, you know, yeah. And then you would just end up frustrated and
well, you know, I had to have my house just so. My kids had to be dressed just so. They had to be in all the activities and
yeah.
all the things because, you know, Jackie was in ballet and then they were in 4-H and they had horses. And, you know, I don't know if it was because I wasn't allowed to do things that I overcompensated. So that's another thing you know, I can speak to. You know, if you're feeling like you have to have your kids in every single thing because you didn't, you might just want to evaluate that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying again, right or wrong. I'm
Right.
just saying,
Right.
think about that. You know, is it really good for them? They don't get good sleep. They're running on half empty all the time, and they're
Mhm.
not really excelling in anything.
Yeah,
Maybe
as a teacher, I see that so many times. The kids they're struggling in school and they're frustrated and they're upset and they're like, I don't have a basketball game tonight, and we're going to from Deer Park. They're going to Freeman, or they're even going like to Clarkston. Just some,
on a school
and
night.
it's like there's a test tomorrow, kids. I don't know, like I'm sorry, and you try to work with those kids because you do. Your heart goes out to them, you know they love what they're doing. They love the sports, and sports are so good for kids. They really, truly are. But it's like it's hard to find that balance for them. And then if you have them constantly in them all the time, yeah,
Well,
for
and
sure.
we've
Like,
taken, you know, a caveat to that too is we've taken high school sports. High school sports were meant for activity, right? They used to
right,
be
they're
called
student
activity.
athletes,
Yes.
student first,
But
athletes
now
next.
every Johnny and Janie are going to be the next professional at dot to
Yep.
dot, right? And I
Yep.
think we have to get clear with ourselves in, is that realistic? Is how much
Right.
pressure, you know? And if
Yeah.
you're not something by time you're a sophomore or junior in high school, it's like, dang, you know, that's a lot of pressure. And why do you think kids are giving up so
Right.
soon?
Yeah.
Like, why don't we let them be kids like I was, you know, out on my
Mhm.
horse with my hair flying back with no shoes and
Yeah.
a swimsuit, riding my horse in.
And you learn more from the scrapes and the bruises and the bumps that you got from those horses than any one person telling you, hold your reins this way or that way, probably like there's no freedom. It doesn't seem like to me, and this is a whole other podcast, so I promise I'll try not to sidetrack us. But it just seems like there's not a lot of freedom anymore for kids to make mistakes. We made a mistake. It wasn't on video, right? Another kid makes a mistake and it's there permanently to haunt them forever. Like me, it's in my mind permanently about the stupid things I said and did. Trust me, I relive those
Mhm.
in my mind, but it's not on video for other people to come and relive for me as well.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
you
that's
know, like I know we kind of took a little tangent, but
well, fear
yeah,
of
but I think
failure.
there's so
And
much value in being able to make, first of all, being able to make a mistake. And I kind of had to learn that too with my horses. Like, I was at a clinic and the guy was like, let him make a mistake. Like, let him do it. You know, I'm so busy trying to like make sure he doesn't do anything wrong. Well, of course he's going to do something wrong. He's a yearling. You know, we were doing a little liberty stuff. And he's like, the more, you know, if you get after him right away for that first mistake, then he is going to make a mistake and then run off from the mistake instead of going, oop, this is a mistake. Maybe I should change my mind and getting a chance to do that. He's gone.
Mhm.
And that really stuck with me.
Yeah. Well, I think it's that fear of failure,
Yep.
and I was stuck in that as a kid, right?
Yep.
Because in a broken home, you're
Same.
constantly trying to find approval
Yep.
somewhere. And I was a
Absolutely.
straight A student. I was a valedictorian in my college. I was always an overachiever, pushing, pushing, pushing. I had the best yard. I had all the things. And, it's allowing yourself to be okay with failing. And when we set I often attribute it to this. It's kind of perfectionism. I'm a recovering perfectionist, and only because it meant that I was getting approval or thought I was getting approval. And I shared this yesterday, but it's like when you get in your car, like you wake up in the morning and there's this beautiful rainbow, and you go out and you get in your car and you start driving because you're going to get to the end of that rainbow and find that pot of gold. But when you're in that car, you could drive forever and never get there. And I think that is perfectionism and not allowing ourselves to fail because we're constantly searching for something that there never is. Instead of giving ourselves gratitude and grace on the way and being thankful for the steps that we have made so far. Like, did I take for a minute that I was valedictorian and was I, proud of myself? No, I was looking for what was next that I could
Mhm.
accomplish, right? It's taking those moments in life and being present enough to appreciate the journey that you've come so far before you start planning what's next. And I have I have to catch myself often in that. I've probably driven my husband crazy. I can't believe he's still here most of the time because I'm always like, whoop, what's instead of just being thankful in the moment, like we bought a new home, it's beautiful, or we've got the ranch and it's beautiful, and now we've got a toy hauler and Harleys, and those are awesome. No, you're looking for what's next, and it's kind of that place of, and I'm encouraging everyone out there because I'm encouraging myself in that constantly. If you haven't read the book, The Gap in the Gain, that is a powerful book on that particular subject. I would just say, highly recommend that. And when we're talking about the voices in our head, the Untethered Soul by Michael Singer too. Those are a couple books that I would highly recommend for what have gotten me where I am. But so, to finish up my story here is that as I we grew our program, and again, it ties into this perfectionism piece of not being able to enjoy what was. There are moments when I look back and I think, gosh, I loved my little tiny house in Moses Lake and all of our students and our life there. But truthfully, the school system was not that great where we were living, and it was kind of dangerous in that, and we wanted better for our kids. And so in 2013, we sold our ranch in Moses Lake and we moved to Spokane. And at that time, Jim was working in the oil fields in North Dakota, and he was gone for almost 3 years, off and on. But again, it was that sacrifice that we decided to make so that we could purchase this place here. And so we moved to this property in Spokane and kind of started over. And that brings me into the next part of my story. And that is when we moved here, what I didn't realize by moving was that we left all of our community and we left the life that we had known. And when we got here and Jim was not here with me most of the time, I had 2 teenage kids. Oh Lord, I would not putting them in a new school, new activities, all finding new doctors, all the things that you have to do when you move. And I didn't have a lot of support. And so and because I was a perfectionist still at that moment, always never really kind of satisfied with where I was always looking for more. I was pushing and pushing and pushing at that moment. And so I hadn't planned to restart our writing program, but I did. And I think that was just me feeling I needed self-worth or something at that point. But I'm glad I did because it's amazing now. But at that moment, and through that transition, I kind of lost myself a little bit. And I started relying a lot on alcohol. I was drinking, well, because all the ladies drink wine, right? So that's something
Yeah.
we would do anytime we were together. And it just became a habit for me. And
Yep.
and it was okay with everybody I was with, the community that I had met up
Yep.
here. It was okay.
Yep. Yep.
Let's just go. Let's meet for wine. I'll come
Yep.
over. Let's sit and drink wine. And it was like, it got to a point where a glass, a bottle to a box, and drinking and eating crap. And I kind of, and then I wasn't sleeping. I didn't sleep for 5 years, and I came up with severe anxiety and depression. And I attribute a lot of that just by lack of community. Also just self-sabotaging behaviors that I wasn't recognizing, of that need to be perfect and everything had to be just the way I thought it had to be, instead of just be, deciding to be happy. And I'm really grateful that I still had a supportive husband at that time. And it was about that time I was giving writing lessons to a good friend of mine, Debbie, who's now a good friend
Oh,
of mine.
yep.
And I watched her transform her health. And so I was like, I guess I'll try it because I dieted all the time. I might as well try, whatever diet she was selling. And so that was December of 2017. And I was heavier than I'd ever been, except when I was pregnant. And I was miserable in my own skin. I was hurting so bad at that point. I couldn't even put my foot in the stirrup to ride my horses. I was in pain, excruciating. When we were in Moses Lake, I had come off a horse pretty bad and I couldn't feel my legs. And so I had a lot of residual pain from a lot of that. And it just exasperated by what I was putting in my body, the stress, the food, the alcohol, all that crap. So I just felt like crap and I wasn't sleeping. And so I did that program, and within 2 months, I had lost 30 pounds. I had quit drinking alcohol. I was finding Teresa again and stepping into being my best self. But through that process, I realized a lot of the garbage from my childhood, and no offense to anyone, I hope none is taken, nobody's fault, I needed to deal with. I needed
Yeah.
to unlayer that.
Yeah.
And over the last 6 years, I have been through that process, and I started coaching others to do the same. And now I use horses to do that as well. And we had a retreat yesterday, had 10 ladies here, and we're just, using all of these, my life experiences to impact and help others has really where I've stepped into being most passionate. And that's where it's like really hard for me to wrap my mind around telling my story because there's so many aspects of it. But in the long and short, that's where it is. And we still have a horsemanship program here at JT Ranch. We teach about 60 students a week. We train horses. My daughter, my lovely daughter, went to Texas and rode cutting horses and is amazing at riding. And she's better than I will ever be. And I love watching her. And she is now in a management position at a ranch. And so I just get to teach when I want, ride when I want. And I do still teach upper level riding. And I love the retreats. That's more of my passion now, is mentoring and coaching people in mental health and even in their mental game with riding high level, because I know what that takes. And so that's where I am now. I'm very passionate about health. So I coach since my 1 yes of choosing my health. I have 4,000 people that have been blessed in their health and in their lives. I don't know the number of horse people. I'm sure it's thousands by now because of my yes in horses. We still have, I don't know, 12 or 14 lesson horses. I'm not really sure right now. And so that's where we're at. Part of our story is our lives shifted quite a bit. When I started coaching program, Jim was still working on the road, and I decided to really go all in with coaching because I saw I didn't have to be out in the arena 14 to 16 hours a day to create income. And that was kind of getting wearing on my body. And I wasn't showing up well in other parts of my life because I needed a little break. And so I started building my coaching practice, my health coaching practice. And I replaced my Jim's income in about 6 months of coaching. And so our dream was always for him to be home on our ranch. So he was able to come home and be part of our ranch. And he got to start riding and training and being here. But within a year of that, he was diagnosed with aortic stenosis. And that makes me very emotional too.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know.
Yeah.
Our lives would be completely changed. He went from a vibrant 48-year-old man to someone not very
Yeah.
tired. And but thankfully we caught it. And if he hadn't have been home at that point,
Yeah.
I know Jim wouldn't have been to the doctor. So I think it was all God led. Everything happens exactly as it should. And so he was home at that time and he went to see a doctor. And the doctor was like, Jim, you're going to need to do something. You'll know. And so within the fall of that year, we made the decision that he was going to have 2 mechanical valves. So he had his first open heart surgery on January 13th of 2020. And, was feeling fairly good after that. But within 2 years of that, he got a very rare infection in his blood. Only 12 people in the United States have ever had it. And which attacked those mechanical valves. They told us he would never have to have a surgery again.
Yeah.
And so he did. He had another surgery, open heart surgery, in 2022, April 15th of 2022. And from that moment on, that really changed our life because he has had a hard time coming back from that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
He actually has been on a list to get a heart transplant for the last year and was finally denied in December of this last year. He will not be getting a new heart because of his lungs being so damaged. So we're realizing that and the reason I only tell this part of my story is that not for sympathy, because we're grateful. We are so grateful for my coaching business, for the ranch, that we still have our home, because that's what got him out of bed the last 2 years. He was giving up his life. And if we didn't have our ranch, that he wouldn't have a reason to get out of bed. And I'm really thankful. But we, in the fall of 2020, realized that we just needed to start living our life and not waiting for the moment that we were going to retire or what have you. So if you feel like you got to wait for the gold watch or whatever for retirement, and I'm not saying you shouldn't plan for retirement, but so many people I talk to, it's just like, well, I'm going to retire in 2 years or 10 years or 5, and they hate their job.
Yeah.
Hate their life. It's not serving them. They're spending 80 hours living somebody else's dreams. I would just, for us, I learned that what is most important to me is my family and time. And we talked about that earlier in this conversation about if we could trade time and money. And what I learned from when I was younger to what I am now is it doesn't matter how much money I have, because time is limited. And the only person that knows how much time is God. And if you're not putting every single minute of your day into what's most important to you, and I do this exercise with people all the time, I'm like, write out your calendar and how many hours a day are you doing something that you love? And I can say the majority of my life has been doing things that I love with the horses and my kids. And, it was exhausting at times, but honestly, and I'm so grateful for that. And that I learned that early on. And then stepping into being grateful every single day for what you do have. Because when you're put in a position like we've been over the last 5 years, you realize that even to just get up in the morning and put your clothes on is a big job for some people.
Yeah.
And even to get yourself out of bed for some people. And to be able to have enough energy to even put your clothes on and your shoes on and walk outside for some people. And what you have right now is to be grateful for every single thing, that your eyes opened, that you could breathe in and out, that you have a switch that you can switch the light on, that you have a toilet to flush, a roof over your head, all those things. And I know people think that's cliche, but it's not. It's the truth. And it's the truth that those minutes that you have in your life that you can really, you choose what to put in those minutes. And if you're wasting those minutes on alcohol, drugs, pornography, crap, sitting playing video games, you might want to really think about that. Because what if you didn't have that decision anymore on how much time you had? What would you do different? And I think that's been presented to me right in my lap. And I'll tell you, every single day I get up at 4:30 because I don't want to waste 1 minute. And every minute in those is valued. And I spend time with the Lord every single day. So if that's not the center of your life and I offend somebody out there, I apologize. No, I don't.
I was like, no, you don't.
Because if it wasn't for him, I will tell you, when you're sitting in a room and you're waiting for your husband who's supposed to be in a surgery for 4 hours and it's 10 or 12 hours later, and you don't have a faith or something to rely on for your faith, you can spend your whole life living in chaos. But when you can live in faith that you are where you are, exactly where you're supposed to be at the moment you're supposed to be there, and believe that in your whole heart, life is so much easier. You're not constantly wishing it away. You're not constantly waiting for the end of that rainbow. You're living in you're present in each moment. So that was an hour of my story, and there's more, but I don't know. Do you have any questions?
No, you've done I mean, that was just so great. I actually don't. I was like, I was making notes because I had to write those books down that you recommended because, I like books. But yeah, I mean, I usually do have just a couple little questions at the end, but you know, I don't have any. You just did such a great job. You've done this before, it seems like. Kind of.
No, I feel like it's God-led, truthfully.
Yeah.
When you step into that place of allowing the Holy Spirit to fill through you and speak through you, that there's people out there that need to hear something that you're going to share.
Hmm.
And I don't know the audience that we're, targeting to, but I just hope that there's something that speaks to all of the audiences, whether you're young or old. And, I want to reiterate through this process is that this just came to my mind. When you're young and you're a kid, you get a value system that is designed by someone else. So we don't come out the way that we are now. We come out just free and happy. And when we come into a home, we're raised by people that have past experiences that they have been given, and their values have been created by a past preacher, teacher, parent, right? And so you
Right.
have not just what your parents have, but their parents and their parents and their parents.
Yes.
What we don't realize through this process is that we have that opportunity within ourselves to choose whether we want to keep that value system or we don't.
Yeah.
And we run every single decision through that value system versus what we truly want in our minds and our hearts and what we know is right for us.
Hmm.
And that is, if I could encourage people to just stop for a minute and really think through, are the decisions that I'm making really for me or for you fill in the blank?
Yeah. That's really a great point that you just made there. And that's something that I've really kind of dove into lately. I mean, I was married for 20 years, got divorced recently. And well, I guess not super recently now. It's been a few years now almost. But I I've been doing lots of counseling, just trying, like just self-improvement. Every couple of weeks I go in and talk to my counselor, and we kind of dive into some things. And I actually kind of on my own started looking into this polyvagal theory. I don't know if you've heard of polyvagal theory or not, but it's about, like you were saying, it's this generational thing. And I mean, as an educator, as part of my degree to become a teacher, I learned a lot about child development and psychology and the way that children and people form their view of the world. And we don't have any control over that. Like you said, my parents got divorced when I was like 4, almost 5. And that had a big impact on me, but I didn't kind of realize that. And it's not their fault. I love my parents. They love me. Like I'm not, people do what they do. They have their things that they have to work through too. But I cannot deny that it impacted me, and I'm not mad about it. I don't hate them for it. But it happens, and I'm sure that I've done and said things to my own children that have impacted them as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Hopefully in good ways, and and some probably some bad ways. But again, I did my best, and I think they know that. But anyway, back to this polyvagal theory. It's like people with PTSD and people who, and just people in general form their view of the world, and it's biology and it's chemistry. And I got to the point to where it's like, yeah, I have some of these triggers, and I'm kind of figuring out what they are and why I react the way I react to some things, and why some things just really hurt my feelings when otherwise, other people wouldn't necessarily hurt their feelings so bad. Or I just take some things mean so much to me when they don't mean so much to somebody else.
Mhm.
um and that's just a thing that I've developed. And I got to the point where I'm actually grateful to my design, to my body, for like, that's what kept me safe all those years. That's kind of what helped me get through some things and survive some things, and even be the person that I am today. So it got to the point where it's like, okay, well, I don't really need that anymore. I don't need to like get my feelings hurt or get really upset or angry about somebody doing this other thing that really has nothing to do with me.
Right.
And so trying to like work through some of that stuff, like it served me well at one point in my life, but now I don't need it anymore. And so it's just been a real game changer for me to work through a lot of that stuff, and also get me to the point to where, yeah, I can stand up for myself. Like I can, leave a situation that's not good for me, even if it's a situation that I've been in for, 20 years or whatever. It just wasn't, it just wasn't a good place to be. And I didn't do that lightly. And I don't recommend it. I really,
Mhm.
like you said, I just love what you said so much about marriage. And it's so vital. It's just such part of our lives and our makeup to just be in that. And yeah, somebody can lead for a while and somebody else can lead for a while. Like I really loved how you said that. But I'm kind of rambling on and on now. But anyway, I just like how you appreciate that, we all come from our parents, and then our kids kind of come from us, and that stuff can go back for generations and generations. But we can look at that, we can analyze that, and we can keep the stuff that serves us, and we can not keep the stuff that doesn't.
Right. And I think just to kind of, we put those protective layers on because we
Mhm.
had to. Like
Yeah.
when I was in a broken home and I had stepsisters, if I'd have been an emotional being at that point, I would have got, like you said, had my feelings hurt all the time. So I put up that wall, and it was for protection. But you can protect yourself from your whole life if
Yes.
you don't. One thing I would just encourage all of us to consider is that there's a difference between evaluating your past and staying stuck in your past.
Right.
So many people stay stuck. What we have to realize is that our past was there. You can thank it and be grateful for it and choose to not be part of it anymore. And it's like, it's not that you can fix it and do
Right.
it different, but it's choosing, what am I going to do now?
Yep.
It might be hard to unlayer that. And that's where having a coach, having a community. And like I was saying, when I moved to Spokane, that was one thing that was really lacking that I didn't really realize. So if you want to make change in your life, it's truthfully, or you want to have a good marriage, or you want to have great kids, or you want to be a great horseback rider, you find somebody out there that is doing what you want, and you ask them to coach you, or you emulate what they're doing, because you don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to know how to do all the things, but you can mirror someone else and how they're doing it. That's where a lot of us get, because our egos and our self-worth get in the way. We choose to try to do all of it on our own. And that was me, with my riding and stuff like that. One thing I didn't share is I mean, I spent millions of dollars taking riding lessons from the time I started being a CHA instructor to where I am now, as coaching high level riders. I spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and dollars, learning from professionals so that I could be better at that sport. The same with health coaching. I've spent the last 6 years on podcasts. I've been all over the United States getting instruction on being a leader and bettering myself and personal growth. I mean, it's not that you don't need to dial all that in alone. You can find people, that are doing what you want to do. Trying to do it and be out on an island on your own is not where it's at. Because you can't, again, like I said in the very beginning, you can only see what's between your eyes. You can't see your blind spots. You can't see where you need coaching. And a coach is someone that just comes alongside you and challenges your belief, whether it's a coach in your writing, whether it's a coach in your life, whether it's, whatever. So I would just, those are some, tangible things that maybe you could take away from today.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it.
Love it.
Love it. Love you.
Love you.
Love
Thank you for having me. Yes.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel very honored, and, sharing our story is so impactful, and being vulnerable. And so I'm super proud of you, even just sharing a part of your marriage and stuff. And, healing comes from being vulnerable and unlayering the onion, so to speak.
Yeah.
Getting to that, and when you're unlayering, it's getting softer and softer. And the softer you are, the more fragile you are. But knowing that you have the tools to deal with life. And it's like when we talked about in the very beginning, as we're older, I feel like we have a lot more tools. We put those layers up when we're young because we don't have those tools. But I'm super proud of you, and, just honored to be here with you. And I really appreciate what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That means a lot to me. Means a lot to me. Well,
All right,
you enjoy the rest of your day and church and all that. And tell Jim I said hello, and the kids. And also, I got to add this at the end. I did send my little colt to Jasmine for 60 days she put on him. And she just did such a phenomenal job with that little horse. Like, I know he came to her with some little
he was something.
thing. He was something. And she just did such a great job. And she just took her time, she just took her time with him. She met him where he was. And I just love that so much, that she was able to do that.